Hey guys, Heath here with The Journey. We are going to roll into this episode. Again, going back to the SHOT Show. Met some really cool people, made a lot of contacts. Networking was off the chart. And today, we are going to have a guy that rolled up to a booth, started talking. He's seen my hat and got to talking about dogs. And it's just a miracle that he didn't get fired, because we stood there and talked dogs for way, way too long. But I found out that he was in the bird dog world, and just piqued my interest, as always. I always want to learn. And we talked, went back the next day, we talked some more, and finally talked him into coming on the podcast and telling us about what he does, which is really cool. He works for Axle, which is a hearing protection and hearing aid company. Actually got me some of the GS Xtremes, and I'm really excited to start putting those things to use. I got them tuned in and hooked up on me. And anyway, so today I'm going to have Tyler Smith from Eagle Mountain, Utah. So the journey has went out west, which is we haven't done a lot, but we are definitely broadening our horizons. So Tyler, how is things in Utah this evening?
Hey, Heath, thanks for having me. Things in Utah are cold and snowy, but absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so this morning, a lot of the schools here were 2-hour delayed, and I mean, I have to say, I'm ready for spring. Like the winter, I'm done with it. Like, you can keep your cold weather, you can just keep it all out there, but we're dealing with the same thing, and we're in that nasty time of year, actually, where it's cold and rainy and wet, and the ground thaws out and turns into a mud mess, and then it freezes back up, so kind of where we're at, too.
That's awesome. You know, one of the saving graces of being out west is that my hunting season still continues for 2 more weeks.
Oh, nice.
And so I have the opportunity to keep going after them, even though it's doom and gloom here as well.
All right. Well, so we're going to talk about dogs here in a minute. Now, Tyler, tell the listeners a little bit about you, where you're at, what you do, and we're going to dive into the dogs.
That sounds great. So yeah, like you said, my name's Tyler. I grew up here in central Utah. I went to school at Lone Peak High School, ended up graduating from Weber State University in their professional sales program. I'm currently the national sales director for a absolutely kick-butt hearing protection shooting company that specializes in the state-of-the-art shooter's protection gear known as Axle, A-X-I-L, and absolutely loving what I do for a living, get to meet people like yourself. And I'm a sales guy through and through. I'm more of a relationship guy than I am a sales guy, but found my niche in the big earth here to help people protect their ears while shooting. So,
yeah, and the style of hunting you do and the hunting you do, like, that's very important, because you're shooting multiple times a day, probably multiple times a shot. So yeah, I can see how that fits right into your lifestyle, really.
Yeah, amusingly, I used to watch my grandpa. He's an old school sheep herder, shoot with no shooters pro off the back of a horse. I mean, true John Wayne of his day. Guy was tough as nails. I've seen all my family before him as well, and just recognized the need at an early age, because most of my family's deaf from shooting guns and live action.
Yeah, I deal with tinnitus pretty bad in my left ear. It's in my right ear too. My left ear is really bad, and it come from shooting. We're growing up as a kid not having any hearing protection. I mean, nobody told us to wear that stuff. We was shooting shotguns and running weed eaters and chainsaws and lawnmowers and tractor. We just didn't wear it, and now, it's 10 times bad. And then, I kind of poke fun at it, but the last dog I had was a Belgian Malinois, and he literally barked in my car nonstop. And I contribute a lot of that hearing loss because of that. I mean, it was nonstop in my ear. And when I got my third dog, which is a Dutchie now, like, yeah, he's quiet. Like, you do not even know he's in there, and I don't even want to hear him that he's in there. The only time I hear him to bark is when I tell him to.
Yep. That's the mark of a true German dog. I don't know much about the Dutchies, but I prefer my dogs dead quiet and calm.
Yep. All right. Yeah. So talking about dogs, Tyler, tell everybody the organization that you represent, and then I'm going to kind of probe a little bit into your background and how long you've had dogs and what actually lit that flame. So, yeah, let's lay it out there for the listeners what you actually do and represent in the dog world.
Awesome. Well, what I actually represent is live action and good times. That's what I live for, is hunting behind really well trained and really well bred dogs. So I'm a connoisseur of fine shotguns and bird dogs, and honestly, I don't care what kind of dog it is. I just like watching them work. So, but a little bit about me there. So I belong to the DKGNA, Deutsch-Kurzhaar Group North America. It's the newest Kurzhaar club in North America. I've been the founding member and a lifelong member, and I'm the current vice president of the club as well. So I get to see how things work and the ins and outs of the club. I've represented the board for 5 years and got to correlate back and forth between North America and Germany, and had a lot of great interactions developing lifelong friendships and relationships with members here in North America.
Yep. And how long have you been the vice president of that organization?
Yes, this year will be my 6th year, and I plan to not stand for re-election. I've got 2 sweet young boys at house that need their dad back, but I've had the honor and privilege of almost 6 years now being the VP of DKGNA, and it's kind of a unique thing here in North America. Kurzhaar clubs are plentiful, and so there's a lot of information and confusion to people who may not know the differences between say my club and the other clubs that exist in North America. And so one thing I like to bring to light is that all of the Kurzhaar clubs in the world all report and are under the umbrella of the DKV, which is the Deutsch Kurzhaar Verband, or the parent club, the original Kurzhaar club that was founded a long time ago. So,
And what is it that, where is that based out of? Like, where is the club? Like, where is it stationed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the main hub of our memberships here in Utah, and primarily out west. However, we are a nationwide club, hence the group North America. We have members, all the way from the farthest East Coast as you could get to California. So, I mean, we had tests all over the nation last year for our organization, but the majority of the membership is based right here in Utah.
I got you. So how many dogs do you have right now?
Well, how many dogs I have and how many I want are two different things. So, but I've currently got 3 females in my kennel. I'm not a very large operation. I choose to stay small for a reason, mainly just because I want to keep the, my quality high and the attention I can give each dog high as well. So I've got Jinx, who is my foundation dog. She came out of a kennel in Illinois. Steve Kosmicki was the breeder. Von Kelger is her name. So Jinx Von Kelger, she's a J-litter puppy from his J breeding. And he gave her the name, interestingly enough, because she was the only puppy born in the J-litter. So he felt like he was jinxed. And let's put it this way, she's lived up to that name, good and bad, for lots of things, but she is a once in a lifetime dog for me.
Yeah. So just so the listeners know, I know when you say the J litter, I know exactly what that means. In fact, we just had a litter out of my male dog, and we started at A. And can you kind of tell people what that stands for, what it represents, what it means for y'all? Yep.
Yeah. So the Deutsch-Kurzhaar breeding system is highly regulated. It's a performance system by which each dog must hit minimum standards in each category, being performance hunt tests, genetics such as hip dysplasia, OCD, von Wildebrands, conformation, and temperament prior to being bred. When a dog has reached that and a breeder has also met the standard, now what people don't understand about a true breeding club is that each breeder in our organization has to prove that they are worthy and representing the club well through several different metrics. But when the registered kennel does a litter, they start at A litter being their first litter. Mm-hmm. And then they work through the alphabet until they reach Z. And then they start over with like A1, B, or A2, B2, C2. And that's kind of how you can tell where they're at in their breeding. Mm-hmm. And the J litter is referring to that breeder's, whatever J land number wise litter number.
Yep. And go ahead.
Yeah. One more piece to that would be the breeder's responsibility is for the life of the dog to keep track of it and understand where that dog is and what it's doing. And so from each of my litters, I have the opportunity to name the registered name of that dog that goes on the Ahnentafel, which is the dog's pedigree, birth certificate, driver's license, and passport all in one. And the dog is tattooed and microchipped with the correlating number to that dog's name. And that's how the dog is known through the German system.
Yeah. And some of the Europeans also use the year to name their dog, or to name their dogs too. We learned that when we were dealing with some guys in Netherlands, that instead of using the alphabet, they'll use the numeric, which I thought was kind of cool myself.
Interesting.
Yep. So,
yeah.
Tyler, before we get too deep in this, how long have you been fooling with the Kurzhaars, and what lit your fire to get into that specific breed and to do what you do?
Yeah, that's a good question, Heath. I've been doing short hairs most of my life. I was lucky enough to be blessed to be born into a family of guys that ran dogs before me. So I had a lot of mentorship and, more importantly, good memories with my grandpa and my uncle. My mom's dad, Jerry Jacob, and my uncle, Scott Jacob, are fully responsible for my addiction here. They used to, back when it was appropriate, check me out from school and take me hunting without my mom knowing. So I wouldn't come home from school and she'd get a call about 6 o'clock that I'm in the truck with a pile full of pheasants or ducks or whatever, and we're inbound to get burgers. So as far as I can remember back, we've had bird dogs in the family, specifically GSPs, which is, the American standard dog. Mm-hmm. And what kind of got me was I served a 2-year LDS mission for my church, and came home from it absolutely enamored with wanting to be a professional trainer and to guide hunts, solely because I missed out on those 2 years of being out serving my religious organization. And so I started guiding at a local club here known as Wasatch Wing and Clay. And they had a guy named Chaz Holt, who is a Kurzhaar guy, who basically I showed up to some free guided youth hunt, and one of the owners of it, one of the head guys of it, was a big member of the SCI and came back and booked, close to $50,000 worth of hunts with me specifically, and he had no idea who I was. And he brought me on, and through him, I kind of discovered that there was a German system, and that it also applied to the DK. So my love for short hairs kind of propelled me from not knowing that there was a breed standard and short hairs that could be trained without e-collars and short hairs that would shut it off when they came into the house. I primarily had field trial lines and some NAVDA lines, and had competed and tested in all of those. But what really got me was I had a NAVDA utility price 3 dog and an AKC Master Hunter dog in my kennel. And my uncle bought this puppy Jinx originally from Steve Kosmicki, because the Kurzhaar Club had just got started here, and he had to change jobs and move. And so he asked me to take the pup on, since I was training professionally at the time. And he said, "Hey, if you do all the testing, I would just want a pup out of her if she can make it." And within a week of her being in my house, I called him up almost 4 times in that week saying, "What the heck's wrong with this dog?" And he'd say, "What do you mean?" I'd say, "Well, she doesn't bark, she doesn't whine, and she doesn't spin in her crate. She just sits calmly until I let her out. When I let her out, she then turns it on and goes crazy." And I couldn't fathom that there was a short hair that actually was level-headed and calm, I guess. And so after seeing her in the field multiple times as a very young dog, where she outperformed a lot of these older advanced dogs in many categories, but specifically in the water and in recovery of dead game, I couldn't turn back. There was no other option. I had found the truth or the light,
Mm-hmm, yeah.
and I had to move forward.
Nice. Yeah. And I mean, I'm kind of taking what you're saying, and of course I can apply it into the hunting world that I'm in, but that's exactly the style of dog that I have now with my Dutchie. Like, he's calm, he's laid back. I mean, you don't even know he's around. And then when you put him out in the field, it's like you just let the fireworks off at the 4th of July.
It's live action, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, it's a completely different world. I have been used to, like I just said, the dog that I talked about was barking in my car nonstop. That was the whole issue with him. He was like a rat on acid. He never sat down. He exerted so much energy in the car when I needed to get him out and actually work him. Most of the time he was gassed in a very short amount of time.
Yep.
Yep. So,
yep.
Yeah.
There was such a big difference for me that I understood that genetically this dog was different, and I wanted to be part of whatever made that different. Being that, I've seen a lot of good American bred dogs, don't get me wrong. I've been lucky enough to own a few. But when I found this, there was no denying that I had to sample it further and test it out, which has landed me in a lifelong addiction of Kurzhaars, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah. Good. And how is she still alive?
Yep. She just did 27 miles this last weekend in Southern California quail hunting, and 11 and a half years old and just strong as ever, and doesn't seem to show any signs of slowing down, but it's only gotten sweeter and calmer with time.
Nice. Very nice. So one of the things too I want to touch on before we get into the training and stuff is you talked about the Kurzhaar culture and the mission. Tell the listeners a little bit about what that means and stands for.
Yeah, I kind of coined this phrase, the Kurzhaar culture. I did coin it when I started venturing into the German dog clubs. And I think anyone that's part of any serious dog group or animal group will attest, it seems to bring out the crazy in every single person. And we found really quickly through various clubs here in North America that the standard and ethics of the breed were being violated by members. And that just didn't sit well with me, specifically hostility towards each other based on differences in lines, training styles, and or understanding of the rules and system. And it kind of turns into this big crapshoot of an ego game. And I just, at a certain point, said, I had my dad and brother with me at an event, And my dad leaned over to me, and my dad's my hero. He's a great man, doesn't ever speak ill, but he leans over to me and says, "Hey, I want to make sure that these are the type of people you want to be represented by moving forward." And that hit me like a ton of bricks. And so, within a few years, me and a bunch of other members who had enough of the bull crap started the DKGNA, and the founding principles of it, which are that from performance to a standard, meaning that the standard of the performance of the dog and the breed should always be put first. And then we also hold our members accountable to the culture, which is that, any company, any organization's greatest asset is their talent and their people. And we want it to be represented in the right way. And so we hold each other accountable to not violating that standard. And I know this may sound like corny, like, well, duh, that should be anyone or any group. Well, take one look on Facebook or your local breeding listing page, and you'll find really quickly that there is someone there violating a breed standard, whether it's in your breed or mine. Mm-hmm. And so Kurzhaar culture largely was developed for people to grasp hold of something that would say we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and we're going to represent ourselves in our conduct in a way that our wives and kids would be proud of what we did when we were not home.
I got you. I mean, that's the way it should be, honestly. So you're the vice president of it, and you're running dogs. So let's start talking about the dogs. And you said you were training dogs professionally. What is it about the training that you see as some of the most valid, or the most important steps? And you can talk about the bird side of it too, if you need to. But like just in general, in the training.
Yeah, I get asked a lot of questions from puppy owners based on that same line. Mm-hmm. And I would say there are two foundational principles that must be applied to a puppy from the day the puppy goes home. And in fact, it starts here when I breed the dog. My wife, kids, and I actually help start ingraining in this. We abide by two things, which is we socialize the dog, and we expose the dog and control the behavior of the dog in those exposed scenarios while you're socializing it. So foundationally, from the day you get that dog home, you're setting up the groundwork and the basis of what that dog's going to experience life like. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you a couple examples. I'm up to my C litter. I've got 23 puppies out walking the God's planet Earth here, and I've dealt with various situations with owners. But the one common factor that I continually come back to is that the dogs that are struggling come from weak owners and weak handlers. And it's easy to blame a dog when it's not doing what you want. But I always say that a bad trainer blames the dog. Most of these dogs have more in them than what we can give them. Now, can you get a dog that's a dud? Yeah, absolutely. Have I produced one of those? Well, knock on wood, no. Up to this point, I've had really good success with, real wild bird dogs and hunting dogs. But for me, I would say the foundation of everything that I do starts there. And then one more thing, and we can dive into this, is I believe that the temperament of the dog should be as such that the dog is easy to train. And that's where, like I said, with Jinx, that's what got me over to the German system and the Kurzhaars was I had a level-headed dog that technically made me look good and made up for my flaws as a trainer. Mm-hmm. So does that answer that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a big proponent. I've had several people on the podcast over the last, year, foundation work. And in fact, I had done a podcast recently with Jerry Bradshaw of Tar Heel Canine, and we talked about, foundation, and that's exactly what you're saying. You got to get the pups out, you got to expose them, You got to look for the behaviors you want and discourage the behaviors you don't want. And I think that makes the dog so much more biddable when it comes to that time of putting some pressure on him and stress in the working environment and the other things that leads through the dog's life. So, yeah, I completely understand that and feel like it's probably one of the most important aspects of a dog's life.
To me, without it, I just got a puppy back from my a dog that I bred that's no longer a puppy. I got it back 2 years ago from a young gentleman whose parents went through some very hard times and ended up splitting up. And the dog had some foundational training done with it, which was great, but there are still several things,
The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dog's health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey.
So I got this dog back. She's now 4.5 years old, and foundational training with the basics like come, sit, heel, whoa, but doesn't understand her place in the pet pack order in the home. And so I'm still dealing with things like counter surfing or just pure negligence from the dog because she doesn't understand that human word actually has weight behind it, whether it be through, discipline or action. She seems to conduct herself in such an independent manner that, she'll flip you the bird whenever she wants. And to me, those foundational things are so crucial in the beginning stages of that dog so that the other things come, like you said, almost a lot easier. And especially when you start the harder things like, finish retrieve work, force fetch, and you actually want to put pressure on that dog. The dog seems to trust you more and understand you more as a human if you do that as a puppy.
Yes. And they're so much more tolerable at that younger age. It's just kind of how it's kind of how I mean, you can do so much more younger, even though, you can do the other things when they're older. Don't get me wrong, but it's when they don't have any knowledge or experience, it's so much easier to put them in the right direction, so to say.
Agreed. It's the difference between homeschool and public school. It's the difference between public school and college education. And I firmly believe it starts day one. So for us, we try to set our dog owners up with foundational training things, but I get asked a lot, what are you doing with your dog? And I'm controlling behavior. That's it. I'm not worried about, does this dog track? Does this dog point? I expect that. If the dog doesn't do that, I'll probably move the dog. That being said, if the dog flips me the bird in the field or disregards my command to be quiet or lay down, depending on what's going on, it's going to get reprimanded, and it's repeated so consistently that the dog understands exactly what I'm asking from it before there's any discipline or harshness shown towards the dog.
Mm-hmm. So, Tyler, I want to backtrack just a minute. As we're sitting here talking about training, who taught you? Where did you learn your skills and methods? And for me, I've been very fortunate. Everybody's heard me talk about it on the podcast. My department sends me to trainings all over the country. I get to go to seminars. I get to go to some hands-on schools for the law enforcement side. And then I've been to the school of hard knocks of learning the hard way in the hound world, where, I started back in the mid 90s and was young and dumb, didn't know anything, and just took off busting through the woods. And it took me a long time to learn things in that manner. And it seems like you have been like just bam, bam, bam. You're there. So what got your start? Who helped you, or who molded you or mentored you to get where you're at in the dog world today?
That's such a great question, and I have so many people to be grateful for. But I'd be remiss if I didn't suggest my grandpa, Jerry Jacob, who introduced me to this sport. And I wouldn't say he gave me any formal education. The one biggest factor and most important thing he taught me was how to read dogs and their behavior in the actual field. When we were hunting, he would always take the time to say, watch her, see what she's doing. He had a pretty signature phrase. I remember him saying, "The tell will tell you everything," and specific to a bird dog. And so I got to learn through, real world education. My uncle Scott Jacob, who I also mentioned, he used to check me out from school even up till senior year in high school. I would slough school with him, and we'd head up to go train with there's an old school pro here named Scott Barner. He was a NAVDA guy, and he was kind enough to let my little punk 16-year-old butt show up and sit with him for 4 hours. And he taught me a lot of really great foundational methods and training techniques that I'll never be able to repay him. Scott is no longer alive with us on the earth, so I think about him constantly. And then lastly, much like you, I read as much as I could. I gathered as many books as I could, and I started training my own dogs to the level that I thought would be appropriate against the performance tests I was in, like the AKC Master Hunter, and just kind of use that as my metric, and got lucky enough to have a few guys see the dogs I had trained and want me to train theirs as well.
Yeah. So how much time do you spend in the field a week? And I know the weather, and I know you travel some with work and stuff like that, but on an average, like what is and I think that's something that a lot of people, like our season, for me, I can only bear hunt three months out of the year here. And if you go out of those 3 months during training season, I can hunt 7 days a week if I choose to. And then during the actual harvest season, I can only hunt 6 days. I can't hunt on Sundays. So that cuts down your time. But how much time do you actually get to spend in the field? I know you told me that you'd been to Idaho this past week, and how much time do you spend with the dogs and hunting and training?
Yeah, so my wife will tell you there's 2 seasons in the Smith household. There's hunting season, then there's training season. We do. I'm blessed in the sense that I get to spend an enormous amount of my time in the fall actually hunting behind the dog. Our hunting season starts in September here and runs all the way to the second week of February. And so I get to spend, on average, I'll spend 30 to 45 days actually hunting wild game behind the dogs in a fall. And I get to go on just the most incredible adventures. 5 to 8 states in that season most years is what I try to average, and just create a bunch of new memories. I mean, I got to take my son Tate this year. He was 9, hardcore Chiefs fan, and by the way, go Chiefs. That
was a controversial game. Just to say,
you say what you want. We're in the Super Bowl, baby.
Yeah.
I got to take him out for his first chucker hunt this year with me. And I asked him before, I said, Tate, you going to run dogs and train dogs like your dad? He goes, well, I don't know. I've never really done it. I said, well, that's fair. You've been out training. He goes, yeah, that's kind of fun. After we got back in the truck from chasing chucks, he grabbed me on the shoulder and goes, Dad, I want to run dogs. I think you had a good time.
That's a good thing. Pass it down. Pass it down.
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about the dogs now and what you hunt, how you hunt. I know that you and I talked, and you basically hunt from foot. Just get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, living in Utah, we have kind of a unique hunting situation here. When I grew up here, there were plentiful pheasants in Utah County, and since the big tech companies and other businesses have started growing and booming here, most of the places I grew up hunting quail and pheasants have largely been developed into houses or buildings. And so I've had to pivot as I, teenage to my early 20s. I started chasing a lot of dusky and ruffed grouse, and also chucker partridge. And we've really never had any issues with waterfowl so long as we get some cold fronts here. I wouldn't say anything near what the Midwest or y'all get, but we get good enough that I can go out and chase ducks and geese here as well. But one of the things I look for in my dogs is I need a dog that's got some endurance, and I'm talking, all day endurance. I average, roughly based on my Garmin steps and the tracking collars that I have, I'll average between 12 and 15 miles on my boot a day, and I'll burn a pair of crispy Nevada GTX boots out in a season. And their claim is the 1,000-mile boot, if you will. So, or at least that's what I've heard. And I run one of those out almost every fall.
Yeah. And your go back to your training season, because I may have missed that. Your training season. So how long can you run dogs? Like, can you run year round?
Well, training here is different. I don't know how y'all train there. We have access to private grounds here, and we primarily use homing pigeons and planted birds. We're not allowed to train, nor would we train on wild game birds. Most of them are in their nesting seasons when training season is.
Oh, okay.
And that's, uniquely why the German system's set up the way it is, as well as it revolves around the different game that's being hunted and why they're being hunted that way. So we start our training with the DKGNA. The Desert Mountain chapter here starts right after chucker season ends. We hold free training days every single Saturday until hunting season starts. And so every Saturday we meet at Wasatch Wing Clay, or we've got membership in Idaho now that's starting to hold them. And you can come out and we'll have various things planned. But if you start with us from the beginning, the goal is to take the young dog and develop it into the finished dog by the end of the year.
So that would be and I'm just assuming, so a 6-month-old dog to a year and a half, or is that a year-old dog to a 2-year-old dog? What is that age frame for that? Or what do you look for consistently?
Yeah, so our Derby class dogs are a dog from 5 months to about 16 months old, and that's our puppy youth group. Mm-hmm. Between 15 and 16 months plus, the dog qualifies for our Solms AZP test, and just depending on the dog's maturity is when we'll push that dog through into those tests. And then 2 years old on, we're looking at advanced tests like the VGP or the NAKP and those type of tests that are, require extreme finish work, the complete finished dog, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And those dogs are usually between 3 and 4?
2 to 6 years old is where I've seen them as young as 18 months, to be truthful, but most of the time they're between 2 and 4 years old.
I got you.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me, and I know I go back to Jason's podcast that I did a while back, that, I mean, you're using these dogs to point birds and retrieve them, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you can go plumb over to waterfowl where they're sitting with you and just basically retrieving. Like,
yeah, I mean, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's so, and I mean, you look at a multi-dimensional animal, and I guess, I'm not as familiar with the bird dogs and the retrievers, but like that's to me is just fascinating that, that the dog can, I mean, I know because of the police side that dogs can do multiple things and be very good at those things. But it's just, it's just amazing for me because I just use my dogs to find a track or rig a track, chase a bear, tree a bear. That, like, I'm not doing multiple things with him or them. And, for you guys to be able to go out and to point and not flush and then retrieve and then, okay, well, next Saturday we're going to go duck hunting. So you're going to sit in the blind with me, or I guess y'all hunt out of the blind. You're going to sit in the blind with me and just go retrieve birds all day.
Yeah. Yeah. The unique thing, the Kurzhaar was bred to be the one dog to fulfill all tasks in hunting, fur, feather, water, or land. Mm-hmm. Our dogs are good tracking dogs in the sense that we do test for blood. It's one of our blood tracking ability. And it's one of the things that I think makes this dog unique. I've done, in a 3-day period, I tracked a wounded mule deer buck on a muzzleloader hunt, shot a limit of chuckers, and then went up to southeastern Idaho and sat in a river bottom and shot mallard ducks until, from sunup to sundown with the same dog. It's a very unique type of dog. And that same dog, I've had puppies from, and she's produced dogs that are in, dead body cadaver search homes, search and rescue team homes. And the dogs are multi-purpose. One thing people forget is that when this breed was developed, the Germans in the Great War used them for dead soldier and wounded soldier recovery. And the dogs were sent out into no man's land with a technique called the Brinksel. And basically the dog's trained when it finds the end task, whether it be a human or a wounded deer, to place this thing known as the Brinksel, which is basically a leather attachment to the collar in its mouth, and then guide the person back to the dead game or the injured person. And so these dogs are used for just multifaceted things. But, being here in the West, we can track a deer, we can track an elk, we can hunt coons with our dogs, pheasant, quail, chucker. I mean, you name it. I want to chase it and put it in my freezer.
Yeah. I mean, that's getting your bang for your buck with that type of dog. I don't know if you and I talked about it, but, I have, 6 short hairs, German short hairs in our, canine group right now. And every one of them but one, I've got one that acts like what you're saying, your female. Like, he's more laid back. He's kind of like a light switch. Boom, cut him on, goes to work, does his thing, cut him off, put him back in the car. You don't know he's there. The others are exactly what you said. They're barking, spinning in the kennel. No, they do. If they didn't do the job, we wouldn't use them. But, sure. I don't know if the disposition of them is completely different. And I prefer the dog like what you're saying. I prefer the dog that is laid back and chill, and then, all right, let's go to work. Bam, here we go. And I'm so curious to. I think I'm going to start doing some research and see if any of those are actually in the law enforcement realm. There has to be a couple out there somewhere.
I know one of our founding members, Jörg Kaltnegger, who is a German who his parents immigrated here to America. He fought in our Air Force. He's a true hardcore-blooded American who's fought in many wars for us. His lines, he's got dogs in multiple FBI homes, and he's got dogs overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq that are doing detection work. which is really cool and unique. And so, for me, you touched on something, Heath, that I would love to share if I'm not diving off too far, but temperament is everything to me, and it's almost unlivable now. I can't not have it.
No, I think it's important in all breeds. The temperament is, of course, we look for it in our dogs that we're choosing for the law enforcement side. Like we used to have dogs that were a lot of dog aggression. And, over the last 10 years, we've moved, like, we don't want that at all. We can't have that anymore. So, yeah, talk about temperament. Tell us what you're looking at, what you see. And even if you want to take it back to your puppies, you had touched on it earlier about, some of the things that you're correcting and stuff, if it's temperament. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the unique things about the Kurzhaar system is we're the only German hunting dog group that I know of that has an actual temperament test. And the test is known as the Wesen. And after each hunt test that we hold, or even during the middle of it, the dog is evaluated for its mental calmness and the ability to shut it off. And what the test is looking for is the fluidity of the dog. It's looking at, I guess I'll back up. What the test actually does is, so middle of a hunt period in Germany, they're required by law to quit chasing game. And the dog is put, a lot of times you're out in the field, the dog is put in the down position and required to stay there until the rest period's over. Mm-hmm. And so we simulate that here. And like during our middle of our Solms test, when the dogs are having to track and there's live game and gunfire, these dogs are required, we pull them all out as a group, and about every 10 or 15 yards, we place the dog on a down. And the dog is required to stay there. And the group backs up, we get our lunches out, our drinks, and the judges stand there and they evaluate the damn dog. And what they're looking for is exactly what we just talked about, is the dog that can shut it off and know its place, sit calmly, not whine, distract the group. They evaluate aggression here, because what will happen is you get a male dog that's too driven. They'll stand up and go square off with another male dog. Mm-hmm. And those dogs are marked and noted. So, when I go to breed to a dog, let's say I have never seen the dog besides what the guy's telling me, pictures and videos and photos, I'm able to say, hey, let me look at your test scores. And in the Wesen section, I should be able to tell, for this dog, for the most part, it's reasonably calm and trainable, and in stressful situations can sit down and be quiet.
So, yeah, I got a couple questions to follow up on that, because I want to know what age, and I know that you said the different stages. So is that through the first stage of testing, or is that the second stage? And when do you start training that? Because that's something we have to do in our certification too, is after we get done with our obedience session, the dog has to do a downstay for 3 minutes, which is nothing, but the dog has got it shut down and downstay. I walk away from him, just like that's exactly what you're saying. And then, the dog's got to stay there. He's got to stay at a down. If he breaks the down, it starts all over. And if he breaks the second time, you're done.
Yep.
So, yeah, talk to me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but like you said, at the Derby level is different than the Solms AZP level, and the Solms AZP level is different than the VGP or the further advanced tests. And there's reasons for that: age, experience, and exposure of the dog. So at our Derby level, the dog is required they can be tied out or staked out. So I suggest to most guys, pass your damn test and go tie the dog off to a piece of sagebrush. Don't risk having the dog get up and go, blow you the middle finger. Pretty much if the dog stays in the sitting position at the Derby level, you're going to get a passing grade on the Wesen portion of your test. if the dog's overly obnoxious, whining, that all gets physically written into the report and noted under a grade between 1 being bad and 4 being high.
And how long do they have to hold this?
The puppy level, 3 to 5 minutes.
And then the next level?
The next level at the Solms AZP, the dog cannot be leashed, tied, or stake and has to be a true downstay. And I've seen judges, the last test that I just competed in, the dog does 10 to 15 minutes. And so it's a real butt pucker for the handler.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time, and especially with distractions. You got people walking around, talking, having conversation. That's for people that's not trained that aspect of a dog. That's not an easy. It can be done, and it can be done fairly easy, but that takes time.
Yep.
I mean, it's
time, work.
Yeah, it's not something that's done overnight. I mean, again, it's a process, and
yep.
Yeah, I'd like to, and I'm sitting here thinking as we're talking, my wheels are spinning. Like, I need to do that with. We do shoot with our police dogs. We have to do it. That's a part of our certifications where we have to actually have the dog at a heel, fire 2 rounds, decoy fires 2 rounds. The dog cannot break on the gunfire, which has changed in the last 5 years because it used to be able, when the person started firing a weapon at us, the dog was allowed to go down and apprehend them. But we changed that in the certification process. So I need to just sitting here thinking I need to do more gun firing with my dog at that level. Just listening to what you're saying, I'm like, yeah, I gotta clean that up.
Yeah. The other unique thing is that throughout the entire day, the dog's behavior is being evaluated. So if there's a problem dog, it's noted. It's not just the Vasen test that says, oh, your dog's good. If you have a dog that's obnoxious in the truck, or too bullheaded or aggressive, those type of things, those are also kind of built into that score and test day. So, and then the last one is our VGP, and the Vasen test really isn't, it's done, but it's done throughout the entire test. You do a driven hunt with a dog on down, and the dog has to remain on down through a sequence of shots between you with the dog right next to you, and then guys out actually in the forest trying to push game in front of the dog. And no matter what happens, if deer, turkeys, birds, whatever come flying out, the dog must remain completely obedient and not move. And then through the gunfire, the dog must not move, which is, as I've done it, it's absolutely crazy. And then there's another portion of this where, like, it's a situation where you're going to jump shoot game. The dog is heeled through a healing course, which it has to pass. Then a long stretch of, picking up your pace and slowing down, where the dog is then placed in the middle of a dirt trail in the down position, and you disappear from the sight of the dog for about 2 minutes. And then you shoot a series of sequencing shots, and the dog must remain in the down position or you fail the test.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm just sitting here because I want to go back to the breeding real quick, but you can't replace good genetics. I mean, you just can't do it. I mean, you can't do it.
Amen.
Amen. So before we get into the breeding, because I'm always astonished at the Germans' strictness of the breeding program, and I know I've talked about that before, but I want to hit on it before we close out this session. But at what age? How long do you give it when you raise a litter of puppies? How long do you give those pups? And I know they mature differently. I mean, we could go through a whole nother podcast about what I'm asking, but I just want like a very, like, at what, like, some of our Hounds guys, they'll keep dogs to 3 and 4 years old. And we can look at it financially. Well, maybe this is what they got and they've got to hunt it. I've been there, done that. I've been in those shoes. I've been very impatient with young dogs and didn't let them mature, and I got rid of them, and then I regretted it. As age has caught up with me a little bit, and again, the blessings that I've had with people mentoring me and coaching me and the training that I've been allowed to go to and attend, I judge things a whole lot differently now. But in general, Tyler, what are you looking for at what age to make you say, okay, I'm going to keep this dog and I'm going to give it every opportunity that I can to be successful? Or I'm really not seeing the things that I want to see. I may give you a couple months, and if you don't make some improvements then, or I'm just not going to keep you because you're not what I'm looking for.
That's a great question. And again, we could spend 3 episodes just on that alone. I've had the same experience, but I'll just tell you. So the Kurzhaar system's designed so that a dog matures very quickly and then becomes very useful at a very young age. And for me, by 18 months to 24 months old, so 2 years, if the dog's not exhibiting the signs of what I need it to, I'll probably start to move on the dog, only because I know there's better and bigger talent available to me. So I'm not going to, for my goals and my purposes, I'm not going to sit on that dog and hope the dog develops. Most of the puppies and dogs that I've trained have been able to accomplish most of this stuff by 2 years old. So that's my mark.
And I think that's a fair shake. I mean, I'm with you. I've got rid of some dogs younger than that because I didn't see certain things. They don't have to be a world beater by no means, but I need to see certain things. I got to see that those little moments of greatness, and then
Absolutely.
I can start putting them together. And if I don't see that then it's very discouraging for me. But yeah, I think 2 years is I think that's a fair point.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. For the first reason, they get multiple, 2.5, maybe even 3 full seasons of hunting. And and this is not me being arrogant or cocky, but under my program and what I get to do, these dogs will have enough exposure by that point that if I'm not seeing it, I'm probably not going to get it out of that dog. Someone else may damn well be, but for what I'm looking for, no. And then the other part of this is the confirmation side of it is equal of importance to us for the dog's physical development. I personally don't ever judge a dog until about 3 or 4 years old on its physical build, because I've seen males from different strains, different lines whose heads don't mature out until they're 3.5, 4 years old. And that same dog was, noted in the ring as a puppy to be underdeveloped. And, you'll hear guys walking around the ring, oh, that dog's crap. He looks like garbage. And which isn't a fair statement. And then at 4 years old, they'll win in the top ring in the entire world in the Kleeman's confirmation test, and they'll place in the highest categories possible. So there's a variation of how I look at the dog, but I think it takes the keen eye and the experience to determine that.
Yeah. So you're saying ability, I'm judging here, or I'm looking at here, and then confirmation, I'm going to let that dog fill out, mature and stuff. And the confirmation don't have a whole, well, I don't want to say that. The confirmation is different than the workability.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. My dogs, for whatever reason, mature quickly in the field, but physically I don't see what I want out of them till they're 3, 4 years old. And it's just whatever my genetics have produced. I've outcrossed to try to improve that. And it just seems to be consistent with me. And so I don't grade my dogs. And I'll give you a good example. My Berlin dog was an SG. SG is our middle of the line, mid-pack confirmation grade at a young age, and just didn't seem to really fill out, was kind of like still, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, gangly. And over time, she's gotten better looking. And I just had her graded in the largest show ring in North America for the Kurzhaar system under Dagmar Haydek, who is revered as, the end-all confirmation judge. She wrote our breed standard, and she would place in the top 4 dogs there.
Nice.
And so I just, giving her the time to physically mature. But that same female is lights out on wild game birds.
Well, so she's doing well at both ends. And that's what we want to produce. We want to produce an overall specimen for that breed. Like that's what our goal should be, which leads us into the next little segment here. Before we end this, we wrap this up, Tyler. I'm always been astonished, again, I said that again, about the Germans' breed standards and stuff. And you said, as we've been talking, that, that'll be a nick on that dog for standing up and, hovering over another dog, or the temperament here and this and that. So with how many little X's, or however y'all grade or judge that, how many of those no-nos becomes a no breed? You're not breeding it.
Yeah, so we categorize so there's faults, serious faults, and eliminating faults in our breed. So 3 categories of faults. A fault could be anything from a physical conformation fault to a serious fault, which would be like an aggressive dog or whatever. At a certain point, when the dog doesn't meet the standard, we have an excluding fault. And just for example, a dog may fail the steadiness portion of his VGP pointing work, and that excludes the dog from passing the VGP. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
in each category, those are the kind of the 3 ways it's looked at. So you may have a dog that is hardcore hunting, great animal in the field, which by all means I would own it, keep it, use it, and hunt it till it died. But it may not be a qualified breeding dog because it can't meet that standard of, fault, serious fault, or eliminating fault. And there's variations of that. So if you've got a dog that's ultra aggressive and is throwing puppies that are ultra aggressive towards humans or other dogs, that's the job of our breed wardens to step in and say, hey, this dog shouldn't be bred anymore. And so it's kind of as strict as it may sound, it's more of a intellectual, by the book, as well as by the, the letter of the law and the spirit of the law.
Mm-hmm. No. And they hold that standard, and that's what I think's amazing, that, they don't falter, and they don't, like I said, the contacts and the people that I've met from Europe, that they're sticklers on that stuff. It's not there's not any gray area. It's yes or no. And
yep.
I feel like as Americans, and I'm guilty, I have bred dogs for no other reason than I got 2 dogs here and I want puppies. I never put the foresight in it to be that complex and that calculated and methodical into my breeding program. And that's one thing that I am trying to work on within my dogs, is making sure, and Carter said this, breeding best to best. Like I want to breed the best possible specimen of a bear dog that I can to my best specimen of a bear dog female, or vice versa. And that's my goal that I'm trying to get going in my breeding. And I'm older now. I'm not going to have a bunch of litters, but that's something that I'm trying to work on within myself.
That's incredible, and I commend you for that. The one challenge I would throw out to any of the users or listeners here is, to which standard do you hold yourself accountable to? Because I've heard multiple short hair guys in this community say, well, I am breeding the best. But then when that dog is presented for, physical conformation, temperament, clear-headedness, water ability, I'll tell you this, the reason I switched was because the Kurzhaar's got you beat somewhere. Somewhere, somehow, I hear this all the time. Well, my American bred dog, GSP, it can do that. And I don't disagree. I had American bred GSPs that could do that too. The difference is we're actually trying to look out for the longevity of the breeding. It only takes one breeding to ruin the entire gene pool you're working on. It takes one crap breeding of crossing the two wrong dogs, and then those dogs ended up in the wrong hands to just keep compounding that effect. Mm-hmm. And I commend you and couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. So, Tyler, before we wrap up here, I'll give you opportunity. Is there anything you want to add, take away, anything that you think that we may have left out that's very important that you want to get out to the listeners?
I'm honored to be here, and I'm grateful that I got to meet you and have your friendship. And so everything I've said with my full heart and clear conscience, and appreciate the opportunity is to, spread my message and have you guys hear me. And more importantly, get out there, expose the youth, and go hunt and keep this tradition alive, because we can't lose it.
Yes. And one of the things that we here at Houndsman XP are really pushing, and I seen somebody post it the other day. So if you guys made it all the way through this podcast and you're listening to the end, all dog hunters have to unite. It doesn't matter what game we're chasing or flushing or pointing or baying or treeing. Like, the antis are trying to push dog hunting out, period. And that goes for all of us. I'm fighting a fight for you. I'm going to fight the fight for the rabbit beagles and everybody else. So what you're saying is right. And, we've got to get together. And I hope, like I said, I want to learn. Like, I want to learn about your breed and what you guys do. And, I don't have a lot of opportunity to bird hunt here. I've got a couple guys that do it, but most of them, they travel. One of my good friends that lives just a mile down the road, he basically goes to Maine and hunts. That's where he goes. Our bird population here is not very good. So,
well, the invite's open for you to come out and experience some hardcore Western live action with your boy here, and just make sure you've got excellent boots, and more importantly, that you're in shape.
Well, if round is a shape, I have got that covered. But no, Tom, I may take you up on that. Like I said, I love new experiences. I love to travel and hunt, and I can honestly say, and guys, don't throw the water at me, I've never hunted behind a bird dog. I never have.
Wow.
So,
well, let's change that.
Well, we will. So, Tyler, with every episode, we always end with the same saying: is thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn, and expose us to your world of hunting with a dog.
Thank you, Heath, for having me. It was an honor to be a guest on here, and I'll look forward to our relationship.
Yes.